Hi, I'm Matt. I'm at Sethawadi Kite in Kalpatia, Sri Lanka, and today I'm going to talk about those first few water start attempts. But let me show you something first. Here's the site here. The sun's going down. Had some good sessions today. It's a beautiful lagoon. Okay, there are some really good videos on the water start out there already. We've got 2 or 3 of them that we have on our list of videos that we give our students. But today I want to talk about a couple of technical things. I'm going to talk about your board choice, and I'm going to give you one little technical trick that has helped a lot of our students over the years. So, talking about boards, simple version is, in general, your board of choice is the biggest possible board you can feasibly use in the circumstances. And the principle is that with the bigger board, you require less focused and controlled power on that surface area of the board. If you come from a colder climate, think of a snowshoe that spreads your load to a wide area and you can walk on the surface of the snow rather than punching through it. Or think of how much easier it is to balance on a big wooden beam this wide than a narrower one. It's the same principle for why we use great big boards when we're teaching beginner windsurfers or beginner surfers. Okay, a bigger board when you're doing your water starts will glide through those times and stay on top of the water through those times with less power in the kite, whether it's through hesitations in the power stroke, not a consistent power stroke, or whether it's light wind or a lull in the wind. It will keep you on top of the water and keep your momentum going and keep you riding. And the bigger the board, the easier it is once you've started to do some water starts to stay upwind and even work your way upwind. So back to the first point about a bigger board requiring less power focused on the board. As an instructor, I like to be able to get my students riding without having to give them a whole lot of power. And a big board allows me to do that. I can give them a smaller kite. I can put them on shorter lines. I've had people up and riding on 12, 15 meter lines with a big board. And to me, overpowering a student for the first water start is kind of a dirty shortcut. I'd rather teach them how to use their techniques, to use their power strokes, to generate the power and to get riding, because that prepares them for the next steps much more easily. And in the moments when they're not riding, when they've lost control, when they're flung over the front of the board, when they're trying to get their board back, if they're overpowered, then it's just much more frustrating and difficult. So this big board thing is not always set in stone. If you're teaching in strong wind and choppy water, it might be unwieldy for the person to carry that board out there. Same thing if you're teaching someone who's quite small or a kid. A big board might be 3-4 kilo and it might be a bit much for them. And another thing, some students who are wakeboarders or maybe used to a smaller board find it a bit uncomfortable to have such a big board, even if it means that they're going upwind better. So usually what I do is I'll take these people on the big board and check to see a few water start forms to make sure they're giving good power strokes and doing the right thing with the board, and then give them the option. They can stay with that board or they can move to a smaller board. Some of them want to go to a smaller board, some of them like the big board, and they're staying upwind much quicker. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of boards here. This one is pretty big. It's 155 by 46. It's a normal board. Most of these big boards are marketed as light wind boards, so its design is not that much different than a regular board. It's just a bit bigger. Notice the square ends. That's good for helping people stay upwind. Now let's take a look at this monster board. Just compare the two. Okay, notice a few things about this board. Number one, the fins are both along the same half of the board. That's very helpful because this corner of the board is out of the water anyway. So on that board, when you're riding, you know, the far side of the fin's not even in the water, but here you're getting the benefit of both fins. Also, it's nice to be able to have your foot straps on the heel side as close to that heel edge as possible. That makes it much easier for going upwind. This board has a few concave channels in there. That's nice. My perfect board would have one concave, but that's how this is. And it's a really good board. We've had good success with this board this size. By comparison, let's look at a medium to smallish board. Let's say this one. That's a 136 by 40, again a normal board, and see how it compares to this board. Somebody water starting in this board will have so much more success than a regular size board, even a lot more success than this one. Again, like I said before, unless you're in rough conditions or maybe it's a small person. So yes, I believe in big boards, and that one's a good one. So when you get to that moment when you're doing your power stroke, the classic thing that happens, and I'm sure you've seen it and they talk about it in the videos, is that even though there's enough power in the kite to get the person up and riding, that board is 90 degrees to the pull of the kite and fighting against the pull of the kite. That's why good board control also allows you to get riding without needing nearly as much power. So good power stroke is important, but what you do with the board is just as important. Okay, so in that moment of the water start, when you're first getting riding, what needs to happen with the board is this. The edge needs to be taken off. The board needs to point towards the power source of the kite, which is not at the edge of the window, but a little bit downwind. And there needs to be a little bit more weight on the front of the board so the backboard is not digging in the water. Okay, so when they're doing their power stroke and the kite is going down on this side, notice that the pull of the power of the kite is not coming from the edge of the window, but from a point downwind. So what needs to happen is, number one, it needs to be angled down this way. Number two, it needs to be pointed in the direction of the kite. And number three, it needs to not be digging in the back end like this. So in effect, what we're doing, the way to get this is applying pressure in this corner of the board is going to make that board point to where they want to go. And a good little trick for this, and I get my students to practice this, just stand like this, like you're on the board, sink down a little bit. Say the wind is at your back and I'm riding and I want to go that way. Say sink down, bend your legs a little bit, and try this. Rotate your body so that your shoulder is pointed to where the pull of the kite comes from. And you can feel that in this front toe, in the left toe, there's a fair amount of force pushing down there, and that sends the board downwind. Same thing if I'm riding that way. I'll hunker down, rotate my body, point the shoulder at the kite, and that will flatten the board and point it downwind. That's the first part of the water start. So short version, keep your body scrunched up, point your shoulder towards the kite. That's going to allow you to get up and riding. And then the next part, of course, is once you're up and riding, is leaning back and applying enough but not too much edge to get going. Okay, try that when you're out there. Have a good ride. We'll see you next time.